Hello and welcome to this video on noun analysis. We're going to show you how to rip one word apart and get as much out of it as possible, and then we're going to go over triangulating your answers to get better marks in your GCSE and GCSE exams. Many of you may believe that word classes are unimportant, insignificant, and even not worth bothering when you come to your exams. However, I'm going to show you today how word classes can be just as easy to analyse and just as important to get you the highest marks as any example of figurative language like personification or metaphors. So you need to know what your learning journey is going to look like. Here are your learning objectives. Firstly, we're going to revisit the four main word classes: nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs, just to give you a quick refresher. We're then going to determine the importance of nouns, because even these alone can be very significant. We're then going to distinguish between differing types of noun, to give you a good idea of how many different types there are and how important they can be to pick out and analyse on their own. Finally, we'll view an example analysis with commentary from both structural and language perspectives. Just because they're taught from primary school age, it doesn't mean that word classes are not significant enough to get good marks in an exam. Nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs can be used to create patterns in text, which can gain big marks if you can get it right. Even taking one proper noun and adjective can gain the highest marks available. It's all about detail. So here are the four main word classes: nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs. Nouns are for naming, verbs are for actions, adjectives describe nouns, and adverbs describe verbs. So nouns are for naming people, places and things, and even feelings and emotions. Verbs describe actions, like moving, just being and feeling. Adjectives describe nouns in reference to size, colour, texture, taste, smell, and all sorts of other things that relate to your senses. Adverbs describe how the verbs happen, so related to pace, like how quick or slow something's happening, the volume of something, and how much effort's being put in, for example. So there are types of each to be aware of. Nouns have three main types: proper, concrete, and abstract. Verbs, the main types are action, and these are the ones you should be focusing on more than anything. Adjectives can be positive, negative, comparative, or even superlative. And adverbs can be positive and negative as well, and also comparative as well. Nouns, however, will be the main focus. Now there will be some adjectives as well, because adjectives go towards nouns as descriptions of those nouns. So it would be stupid for us to leave them out, and when we get to triangulation, it will be necessary to use more. So why are nouns important? Well, it depends which noun it is. Proper nouns can have some great significance within a text, particularly place names, with regards to references to places and settings. When analysing a single word, it depends how that word is being used, and settings say a lot. What's being said in the text is usually reflected in the text structure, and part of that structure is the setting. Shakespeare used to set everything abroad so that it looks like other people were doing things, living tragedies and sometimes fantastical lives. Witches couldn't possibly be in England, of course. So this is how you do it. I'll give you an example of this and then suggest some other words for you to try later. Let's take the noun space, used at the very start of the text, and we can relate this to structure, which is relatable to paper 1 question 3 on the 8700 AQA exam papers. So if we look at the word space, you'll be able to make all sorts of connections to words relatable to space. And we are talking about cosmic space here, not just the space between your ears. We can think about things like the setting, synonyms like vastness, themes like isolation and other subsettings like planets, comets, moons, themes like discovery, characters like aliens, events like supernovas, and the existence of stars. These are all connotations, and these are things that you'll be used to looking for when you talk about things like semantic fields, when you've been learning English. So what do you do with that kind of plan now? Well, you face a question, that's what you do. Paper 1, question 3 is based on structure, and is usually written something like this. How does the writer structure the text to interest you as a reader? Yes, you. What you think is important. And even if it doesn't mean anything to you, then lie. Just say it does. Think about how it might mean something for someone else if they were thinking about it. That might help you develop an answer even if you think you don't even have one. When writing to analyse, you have to try to explain every aspect of something in as much detail as you can. So I'm going to try and show you how it's done. The proper noun space is used as a setting in the text. Immediately the reader understands this could be science fiction, because we don't dwell in space yet, so it hints at possible alien characters as well, which links directly to the sci-fi genre. Hints can also be taken and presumptions made about plot and themes of possible danger, discovery, exploration, and new alien life. It also links to the idea of mystery and inspires a fair amount of curiosity, enough to intrigue and spur on a reader who is already familiar with the vastness of space. Most kids are taught about space through school, and so even if a reader isn't a fan, then they will still have enough general knowledge to expect particular things. As long as you're talking about the word in relation to the whole text, then you will always be writing at least a pass level. If what you say is simple but clear, it will still even be at a grade 4 to 5 if you said enough. 2 or 3 sentences will never get you any more than a few marks. A language focus will be very different from this, and will be relatable to paper 1 question 2 and paper 2 question 3, and even in half paper 2 question 4. You would just have to do this twice and compare them together for that question. So an example question would be paper 1 question 2, language. How does the writer use language to describe the isolation of the characters? So again, with the plan from before, we can use this from a language perspective as well. The writer uses proper noun space not only as a way to introduce us to the main setting, but as a minor sentence stopped very abruptly and packed with meaning. Space demonstrates how alone the characters are. Its vastness directly reflects the isolation felt. They're not just lost or in an isolated area, they're in the most empty place known to humanity. The noun itself is one to label emptiness, like the space between galaxies, or even between your ears. The noun is also linked with themes that spark thoughts and images of death. Not only does the darkness of space, the heavens, represent death in a number of ways, but humans cannot survive there. It's void of life. If life can't even survive there, then the writer sets his or her story in the most desolate area possible. Before it even begins, we know how lonely they will be. Now I've challenged you to doing it with a word on your own and shown you an example of doing it. Let's look at a text. A question focus would be paper 1 question 2. How does the writer use language to describe human beings? You must focus on lines 4 to 25. Remember, in the reading questions, or a few of them, it will point you to specific parts of the text on which you must focus. If you focus outside these lines, you could seriously limit your marks. So let's take the word primitive and work with that one. To get good marks in any language question, I would always advise that you triangulate your answers. And that means not just choosing one piece of information from the text to back up any answer you write, but that's three. So to triangulate something is to surround it on all three sides. So your evidence then effectively covers from all angles and all sides, and you must get top marks if you explain it well enough. So let's start the response with just primitive. The writer uses language to describe the human race as being rather unadvanced. He used the negative adjective primitive. The word makes me think of things from the olden days, useless, and not very up to date. This adjective also links to the immature and people but when they're young and know nothing really. The writer doesn't seem to like us very much. Now this isn't bad. It would get you up to about level 3 at the lower level. And there's only one level above that. So let's see if we can reach that. There are other words and phrases which clearly show how much disdain for humanity that the writer-narrator has. We are not just primitive, but we are also reminded of the fact that we are ape-descended and miserable. Negative adjectives are a good indication that the human race are considered to be unhappy and no fun at all. Now to reach beyond it, you would have to go a bit further than this. Up to level 4 needs you to be perceptive and detailed to get an A star or even A double star, which is a 9 now in the new specification. You'd have to connect everything to an outside context and try to pull everything together at the end in a summative point. Have a go at that yourself and see how far you get. Post some comments at the bottom if you want some advice, or even some small paragraphs of analysis, and I might give you some feedback if I've got time. You might want to practice another time. So take the text with you. You can take a screenshot now of this, or you can download the resources from the bottom. There'll be a link down there to Google Drive, and you can download them quite easily on your phone or a computer, or pretty much anything that's an electronic device. So let's hope we've covered all of these, and if we've not for you, then please leave some comments at the bottom and ask any questions you need to. We will always get back to you if we can. Thanks for watching, and look up some of our other videos if you get stuck with anything else for your exams.